Hello, Penny. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I had to sort out some logistics before coming on, but it's all good now. Um,
Good.
so I get it that you're currently based in the States,
Yeah.
and you were born in the UK, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I've just been here for the past year.
Yeah. And what brought you to America then?
Well, I came about, so on Saturday it will be a full year that I came. And I came to just literally spend some time with a friend doing different things. And then the pandemic happened. So I got stuck, and then I decided to turn being stuck into staying.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. That's really exciting, isn't it? It's like, what a place to be stuck, right?
Yeah,
And it's good. I mean, I've seen all your snow pictures, such beautiful sceneries, gorgeous nature that you're surrounded by. It's
yeah.
great.
I've been staying on like farms.
Oh, it's beautiful. So, just wanted to introduce you a bit to the project that I'm working on, and also a bit about this social media campaign. So, I'm currently making a film on ADHD in women, especially those who have had late diagnosis in life. And I thought, in parallel, wanted to start a social media campaign to increase awareness, and shine a spotlight on what the women has to say, women themselves who have ADHD, in the hopes to bust some stigma, and just normalize the mental health condition a bit. So I just wondered if we could start by maybe if you could introduce yourself, like what you do, and sort of like how old you were when you were diagnosed.
Yeah, so I'm Penny. Um, I am an artist. Might as well just say that I'm an artist. I'm creative. Um, I'm creative. That sounded hilarious. Um, I am a mental health and well-being coach, um, and writer. And I don't know. I literally. I don't know how to even introduce myself today. Not had enough coffee, but yeah, I'm very passionate about mental health, helping people understand and hopefully reverse some of the symptoms that they experience. Um, and yeah, I got diagnosed. This all started, I started writing about mental health after being diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 30. So yeah, I started writing about mental health, which led to me being invited to speak at events, and then I wanted to help other people. So I went down the route of training to be a life coach, so I could do that in a more life experience based way. And yeah, the reason that I grew so passionate about speaking about it is because before before my diagnosis at 30, I knew nothing about mental health at all. So knowing that, there was just even just the whole thing just opened my eyes to what different disorders are, why people get diagnosed with them, what the label actually means and why it's there. And yeah, it's changed my life knowing that. And so I knew that other people are going through similar. There are, I found out, and I don't know the exact numbers, so this is kind of I'm just giving an idea of some of the. I was invited to speak with a lady called Michelle Beckett. Um, you know her,
Yeah,
yeah,
I know her. Yeah, yeah.
on the
Yeah,
BBC. So on
slogans.
radio for the BBC. So we were on the same show together, and she gave a statistic, which was that out of all of the so a huge portion of women who are diagnosed with ADHD, I think it was like 50% of women who get diagnosed over the age of 40 get diagnosed after a suicide attempt.
Mm.
So what I realized is that the all of the things that were falling under the ADHD diagnosis umbrella, which, as you probably know, the symptoms go on for days, weeks and months, trying to list them, they at a certain point in life can be so hard to manage that some people feel hopeless. And so it just, even hearing that early on in my journey, when I was just speaking about ADHD and trying to raise awareness, just hearing her say that just fueled me even more into trying to make this a comfortable conversation, trying to help people understand what I've been learning, which is that all of the symptoms that we experience are reversible, all of the ones that they are. And so just trying to show that, and trying to with all the things that I do, without directly saying this will help your ADHD, this will, just trying to encourage people to practice things that will, and that I have definitely tried and definitely seen that will help. And so that's why I do everything I do. And it's not just ADHD, it's all mental, psychological, emotional struggles that we go through. And the reason I say that, sorry, this whole show is going to be me introducing myself now, even though I couldn't introduce myself 5 minutes ago.
You kicked into gear now.
But I think it's important to say that the reason I say that is because a year after being diagnosed with ADHD, I'd learned, so I was told that only medication would help. I was told that I had severe combined ADHD. So that means I had severe inattentive and severe hyperactive. So they said that the doctors that I spoke to said that the only way that I would be able to be okay would be medication. And so I was very uncomfortable with hearing that, because I knew nothing about mental health. I'd only seen the scary stigma around it. And so hearing that I would have to take medication was really scary to me. So I went on a journey of trying to find out how to lessen and hopefully minimize and reverse some of the symptoms that I struggled with the most in different ways. So I learned that through nutrition. I learned it through boundaries. I learned it through time management, scheduling, all the sleeping patterns, the kind of things that I was ingesting in regards to, alcohol, smoking, and all different things. And I learned so much about all of that for a year I was really successfully managing my ADHD. I was like, it feels like it's not even here anymore. Like I genuinely felt like that. There were times when I had like meltdowns, and I would feel sensitive to everything. And what I realized is, so a year after the diagnosis, I then went through a few difficult situations. So there was a few hard things that happened in my life or around me. And out of nowhere, I just couldn't be bothered to manage my ADHD anymore. So I couldn't be bothered to eat right, exercise often. I couldn't be bothered to be careful about what I was watching and when I was watching it and how much technology I used. It all went out the window. And that led to me being diagnosed to CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this made a lot of sense to me because I had been through a lot of trauma. Before my ADHD diagnosis, I had a life of, there was so many different traumatic things that had happened from childhood to teenhood to young womanhood. And so the way that I got my ADHD diagnosis was because I was sick of trying to numb the pain of my traumatic experiences, trying to forget about it by, keeping distracted and seeking validation, people pleasing, substance misuse. I was doing a lot of that stuff to numb the pain of what I'd been through as a child and a teenager. And, so by the time I got to 30 and I thought I was doing a great job at that, that's how I ended up in an office talking to a doctor about mental health, because I thought I was doing well at cleaning my life up to avoid, traumatic, the avoiding trauma. And then I get told that I've got ADHD. So so what I'm getting at is when I got the diagnosis for CPTSD, which is an anxiety disorder that people who have experienced ongoing trauma get, I found out that the symptoms that show that a person has that were identical to the symptoms of ADHD that I struggled with the most. There were, you know, some differences, but a lot of them were coming up as identical. So I was like, have I got two disorders or two problems that have the same symptoms? So I'm getting double. Is that why the doctor thought I had severe ADHD, because I'm getting double the symptoms because of my past trauma? So I begun a journey of healing from the past, addressing certain things that had happened, you know, freeing myself from the weight that came with those things. And so that's the journey I'm still on. I'm still in the process of, you know, healing from things and realizing why, you know, certain things are happening in my life, certain difficult things which do get called symptoms. And that's why it's not just ADHD that I am passionate about raising awareness about, and making it comfortable to speak about. So yeah.
Can I just ask you, because you mentioned that you spend a lot of time trying to manage your condition, whether it's ADHD or CPTSD, through lifestyle changes and restructuring, you know, your life. So were you ever on medication? Or
I tried it, yeah. So when at that point when I couldn't manage my ADHD anymore, what had actually happened is the traumatic experiences that were happening around me. So one of them were, sorry if this is triggering for anyone, but so all in the same time period, the Grenfell Tower fire happened, and that was at the end of my road. A friend took their own life, and another friend had a very, very serious accident. This all happened in a short period of time. And so whilst I felt like I was, you know, coping with something well, another thing would happen and I was just almost blacking out. So each time some bad news would happen and I would feel, you know, almost overwhelm of emotion, I was just blocking it out, like completely blocking it out. And doing that too much was obviously having an impact on me. And so I forgot your question.
I was just wondering if you sort of were on medication.
Oh yeah, so when that happened, and I went through like a time of almost what someone would probably describe as a time of depression, I guess, a depressive season. All the ways that I had adopted to manage my life went, and so I then was curious to try medication. The great thing is that in this time I had started a series called 31 Days of Loving Your Brain. It was Mental Health Awareness Month. I wanted to talk about, I wanted to get different people in to kill the stigma, to make it a normal conversation so people weren't always afraid or be feeling like they're being looked down on for struggling mentally. And I got a few people on, some amazing people that had experience with ADHD but had taken medication, and it just helped to kill my own judgments and my own fears around medication, because I saw them and I saw what the benefits were. And whilst I didn't feel the need at the time, because I was still managing it okay, I did remember these benefits when I was in a bad place and I couldn't manage my ADHD myself anymore. I then went and tried medication. It was Elvan's medication that I tried.
Cool.
And yeah, it was a stimulant, wasn't it? So it was intense, and it wasn't probably the best. Made me feel a little bit, you know, a little bit disconnected, but I got stuff done. So I was like, cool for the time being. But it was a short period that I was Actually, it was a bit under a year.
Mm. Yeah, I get it. There's quite a lot of misunderstanding around the usage of medication in treating ADHD. Although there are a lot of people who also want to seek a formal diagnosis in order to be prescribed that medication, which some have said is life-changing. And for others, it takes time for them to titrate, and find the right concentration or the right type of medication. And I get it that your style of management is that you'll try and sort of manage it yourself until you feel you need it. So that's like a backup, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it was great for me being able to see how, I guess, something that people who have been diagnosed with ADHD probably struggle with. And I'm not saying, and I say people who have been diagnosed because everyone struggles with it. The thing about ADHD is everything that we are told, all the symptoms are things that everybody experiences: procrastination, rejection sensitive dysphoria, um, emotion, which is a painful fear of rejection, emotional dysregulation, which is, your moods can change rapidly in the space of a second, not being able to regulate your emotions. These are all, and the list goes on: inability to focus, inability to sit still. I'm just touching on a few. These are all things that people go through at different times. I'm sure there's someone who has never, who will never be diagnosed with anything, and sometimes they can't sit still, or sometimes they procrastinate and put things off. Sometimes they have a fear of socializing and being around people they don't know. I'm sure everybody goes through that at some point. It's just people who have been diagnosed with ADHD are known to go through that at an intense rate, more than others. And so with the medication, the thing that I struggled with the most was, I guess at the time when I came off it, was just getting up, getting things done. And when I took the medication, I remembered just how productive I could be, because I wouldn't say I was depressed, but when I'd go to because I was having therapy at the time, the form was saying I was depressed. I when they
Yeah,
ask you to put that off.
I get it, because actually, when you live with ADHD, you don't have persistent depression, do you? You have like a persistent low level of sadness that is bad at more towards the transition, between something, when you experience it more. Someone else just said here, the only medication you need is weed, which I have come across, like a lot of people self-medicate with cannabis, right? And there's a whole host of other things. So it's interesting that I hear you talk about a bunch of behaviors that people with ADHD.
Sorry, I think we had a time delay, but self-medicating with cannabis is definitely, I wouldn't advise it, by the way. Just because there are, you can feel like it's calmed you down, and it's helped you to relax and helped you to be less on edge, but it's also numbing what could come, like what else is going on within you. And there's so many more implications and so many more reasons why this would be a whole separate hour, but I didn't want to not say that I definitely wouldn't advise it. I've done it, been there, done it, felt like a good idea for a while, but it's not. There's a wound that needs to be cleaned, and that stuff just covers it up and stops the infection getting sorted, so to speak. You have to go deeper. You have to find that is just covering up a wound that you can clean. And
it basically numbs like all areas, and not just the bit that need helping.
Exactly. And I'm not, I'm just saying that's what I've learned, and that's what I'm seeing now that I'm away from it. But it is, again, one thing I have to say is, if and I'm just saying this because I know a lot of people who go through who are experiencing or are, I guess, a victim of unresolved trauma, that have had bad things happen or have experienced difficult situations and have never really processed it, sought help for it, talked about it, you know, engaged with the feelings that were associated with it. If you are someone like that and also have ADHD, you the way that your ADHD is going to present itself to you is going to seem so much more harsh. And also, it's common for people who go for those things to smoke it away. And sometimes you can feel fine. Sometimes you can be like, I'm doing well at my job. I might have a little smoke at night, but compared to what I've been through as a child, I'm really successful. I'm really strong. I'm coping amazing, because you know, you have, but I can't sleep at night, so I have a little smoke. Again, it's you shouldn't need that kind of assistance. At the end of the day, smoke's going into your lungs, you know. I know there's CBD oil and stuff like that, and I don't know as much in detail about I know bits, but I'm still going through learning myself.
There
but,
isn't formal research done on CBD oil usage.
You need it.
So no one really
the
knows.
Research is needed, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So it's interesting to hear you talk about trauma, because I know that there are certain symptoms that look quite similar to, you know, having ADHD, and to realize that you have both, you know, ADHD and trauma, you know, isn't probably an easy route to diagnose, you know. And you know, in some ways it's good that you have found the reason for the way your mind works a certain way. So I wanted to ask you, how does an ADHD mind look like? What is going on in your mind?
It's so an ADHD brain, in, you know, if you think about why certain things happen, especially inattention wise, is it's always understimulated. So it's searching for stimulation all the time. So it's like, I guess, having 100 tabs open in your mind, and then whilst you're focusing on one, another one just pops open, or 5, and all different things are going on at once. It's like the hard thing is trying to hold attention to things that are not naturally pleasing to you. So what I mean is, 2 of the things that I found helped me understand what was going on when I got my diagnosis is an ADHD brain's always understimulated, and we have a interest-based nervous system. So it's harder for somebody with ADHD to focus on tasks that aren't interesting to them. And that can sound like, well, who doesn't? But when it comes to doing normal things like paying your bills on the phone, or writing an email, or, you know, it's not the most stimulating activity, but it's important to do. If somebody sends you an email, you reply. It could be a work opportunity, it could be something important, you reply. Now, with a person who has an interest-based nervous system, whilst replying, they could remember that something's upstairs that they need to go and sort out, and it's because it's like self-sabotage, really. It's, you know, which is another thing that people go through, which looks almost identical. But yeah, they're the 2 things to bear in mind: understimulated and interest-based nervous system. And the way that I've overcome that, even though I definitely need to practice it more, is by create time boxing. So creating a schedule for the day by the minute, literally, like, if you wake up at 6 and you stay in bed doing your affirmations, which I try to do, or praying, wake up at 6, get out of bed at 6:15, do the, you know, and literally by the second, because then you're stimulated by, and if you change your task often, you are stimulated. So if you had to, for instance, clean the house, that can sometimes be a whole day's task depending on the size of your house, but you had to clean the house and, say, reply to some emails by a certain time, you could, to make sure that you that you are stimulated and you don't end up finding other things to play with or do or focus on, schedule breaks, schedule, you know, do the front room and put on maybe a podcast at the same time so you are stimulated. People with ADHD often find that if they're doodling, if they're listening to something, if they're partaking in an artistic or creative activity, they can focus on other things better. So if you know, knowing that your brain might get understimulated whilst doing something that's important or that you need to get done, find other things to do in the meantime that can perhaps stimulate your brain, like listening to music while you clean, or listening to an uplifting podcast while you clean, having a break after an hour and eating, making sure you're eating so you're getting the nutrients to your brain that stop you from craving things like, you know, sugar, or that help your energy come up, and not the hyperactive energy as well, motivational energy. But also scheduling in half an hour of doing nothing so you can faff around and you know, do things that would normally be seen as a distraction. But having that schedule to stick to it, changing task often is stimulating, so you get a lot done even though you could procrastinate on that thing for 6 months, you know. So I literally wrote a whole blog post called Time Boxing, because I would end up just doing nothing in a day. I'd have so many things I want to do, but not knowing where to start, not knowing how to prioritize and put things in the right order. So I would just cut them up into different segments and spread them out across the day.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to admit, I actually did that when I was studying for my exams when I was in school. And the beauty of being able to do that at the time was I didn't have anyone who needed me, you know, to sort of look after them or, you know, sort of work for them. But since becoming a mum, it's been a bit harder to have that time boxing. So all my work get lumped into when everyone else is sleeping at the moment. You know?
Yeah.
So like, it's quite interesting to hear you say that, because then you can put in, you know, individual tasks in, you know, each hour of your day, and then having a break in between those boxes.
And you look forward to the break. So doing the task might feel a bit like, but if you think about the joy you're going to feel when the task is complete, and the fact that in 45 minutes you have a break, and then what happens is when you do that and you complete a day of that, you just feel so much better about yourself. You start to feel so accomplished that if that can leak into, and you might, you know, you might need a rest the day after because you've done so much and this is new to you. But the more you do that, the more your confidence will be built up. The more you won't feel like ADHD is a burden that you know, you have to try and push through to be a better person. You can see that there are great not great benefits, but some of the traits that are listed under people with ADHD are great sense of humor, ability to hyper focus on something we are interested in, you know, empathetic and so many other, you know, energetic, which is good for certain things. And so focusing on those and trying to like sharpen those and manage the harder ones, and also dealing with any emotions that you have locked away first, because you might find that you might feel like, oh, I can't do anything because I've got ADHD, it's holding me back in all areas of my life. But also you've got lots of unresolved trauma, which is making the symptoms feel 20 million times worse. So if you deal with some of the unresolved trauma and address that, and there's so many ways through therapy, that's another conversation. But if you make a conscious decision that I am actually going to address and deal with some of the stuff that happened to me as a child, even if doing that just means letting go of it, forgiving some people, speaking goodness over yourself, loving on yourself, even if it's as simple as that, then you might find that your symptoms aren't even as strong as they were, because a lot of it was being magnified by a lot of the other stuff going on inside of you. And these things only get worse the longer you don't deal with them. And so once you do, you'll be very surprised to see that I can focus a lot more. I'm not avoiding life anymore. And you might find that you can manage without medication all of a sudden. You just might need to be a little bit more loving and patient with yourself. And you might find that, yeah, you're able to manage your emotions better. Why? Because you're not blocking millions of emotions down and feeling them.
That's
So
really interesting, Penny. I mean, there must be a bit of a blockage for people who, you know, are trying to go through their day-to-day lives but have unresolved, you know, issues within themselves that might make their reaction towards stress, you know, harder. And I wanted to ask you, how does ADHD behaviors show externally? How does it manifest for you?
Externally, I guess, what do you mean? Like
A person who has ADHD, a lot of it is going on inside their brain. You know, other people might see someone with ADHD looking quite normal, especially with women who don't have the outwardly hyperactive presentation.
Yeah.
And for me, I used to be really hyperactive as a child, but as I grew up, I internalized all of that. It was all inside my brain, and people would think that I'm quite organized, and you know, quite calm. That's what I've heard actually, which is very strange. And my husband thinks I move slowly, but you know, it's also strange to me because inside I'm so fast with my thoughts. You know, there is no break, and I'm constantly overwhelmed. So I'm just wondering, how would someone see someone with ADHD on the outside? You know, does it always translate? Or
I guess for girls, so for if you know someone, you would find that people maybe start a lot of tasks and don't finish them. That's a physical, I guess, an outward. You know, if you find that someone has amazing ideas, start stuff, never finishes them, I guess seeing that a person can't hold their attention onto something for a long time, you know, that is as well a form of overwhelm. You can get overwhelmed even by the amazing and it is, if you go deeper into I'm actually going to do a post about this, so keep your eyes open. I'm going to do a post about self-sabotage, because this is very, very it's serious. But like, getting overwhelmed by good feelings can cause us to do things which like run away from them, which you could be like, oh, it was my ADHD, but really it was overwhelm / self-sabotage that caused that. But one you know, in girls you could find that where guys at a young age probably outwardly being hyperactive and disruptive and stuff like that, that's how it was seen because of the amount of energy they've got. But also, and this is just a school, because it was school nurses that were mainly helping doctors come up with these you know, theories and symptoms, but also it was because you know, young boys were being forced to learn in a certain way that didn't work for them, sitting on a carpet with their arms crossed when they've got heaps of energy. They want to be active. They're going to be seen as disruptive because they can't sit down on the floor listening to a story for an hour when they're at the time in the day where their energy's at its highest, you know, and then having so much on their mind, wanting to share it, so talking when they're not supposed to talk, that can seem disruptive if you're telling a child to do something that is very, very alien to how they feel inside and how they learn. Everybody learns different, and schools, you know, school nurses and schools play a massive part in helping, you know, parents and doctors identify what's going on with a child. But no one really takes into consideration that the way that the school system is built might not suit that person. And if it was a little bit more flexible, then maybe they wouldn't seem disruptive, because they wouldn't have so much held in energy, which could be used in a good way. So I guess thinking more about adults, I guess picking your fingers, biting your nails, twiddling your hair, pulling your hair out, picking your skin, and again, that's for stimulation. The intensity of biting your nails and picking your fingers and picking your skin, it's the little bits of pain and the digging that is stimulating your brain. So that's why, you know, pulling your hair, twiddling your hair, it's a stimulating feeling. So for a brain that's constantly searching for stimulation, this is, you know, daydreaming, drifting off, stuff like that. Yeah.
That is so true. And also you can see that in children as well, because you know, like with ADHD in children, like not all of them would have the hyperactive presentation, but if they do, then they are more likely for girls to like just giggle a lot and talk a lot and can't stop talking and can't stay still in one place. And it's very unfortunate that in school, especially as they get a bit older, they are told to sit down and in one place and not move, and if they do, they might get punished, they might get in trouble, you know, which is strange, because if you think that that is your natural nature, your true nature, and someone's asking you to be the opposite, and you have to, as children, how do you work out the systems to sort of keep yourself in check, you know?
And you always feel like you're doing wrong. You feel like by just being yourself with no intention to be naughty, you're wrong. That is like so confidence killing. And so no wonder when adults get diagnosed with ADHD, or when it's not, you know, when it hasn't been paid enough attention to and helped with as a child, no wonder people who go on to, you know, say people with ADHD have social anxiety, can't sustain relationships, find it uncomfortable to build relationships, because they're scared of rejection, because they've been told by being their normal self they're wrong, and also by feeling like they've got to overcompensate in ways that are just weird and over the top, because they're always told, oh, you're too much, you're too this, you're too that, when really they just didn't know, they didn't have the right support on how to use their energy for something good, or no one was like, okay, so I have a child that is very creative or very energetic, doesn't find school easy to deal with, let me find out what they do enjoy, so that after school and on the weekend they've got something to look forward to that we can help them develop. If someone doesn't know enough about it and doesn't have that kind of mindset to help pull out the strengths of a child, and they're just constantly been told, no, you're doing too much, you're this, you're that, then as adults, the need for assurance, the fear of rejection, this is where rejection sensitive comes from, because you're so scared of, like, if your family or your teachers or everyone around you when you were young have been like that with you, and you genuinely know, I was not feeling like a naughty child that day, I didn't mean to do anything wrong, I didn't even, then when you get older, you want people to love you and accept you, you do the most, and it's unhealthy, and then any feeling that you're doing anything wrong, you leave the relationship, you don't even let anyone leave you, you leave because, and then people say, oh, people with ADHD can't maintain or build relationships. I wonder why.
Eject button.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I did something wrong, bye, I'll leave. So they can't leave me because I've been rejected for my whole childhood by just being what I consider normal, where it wouldn't even be an issue if the differences that you're seeing in your child, or you sat down, and not, this isn't an attack on parents, this is just talking about an individual. If an individual was supported, or if it was not just a reason to tell them off, and more of a I wonder what's going on here, I wonder what I could, you know, if school isn't working, but you know what I mean, if the strengths were pulled out, and school has to work, then giving them something to look forward to, knowing that, and explaining to them what they're going through and where their strengths lie, means that they will be more productive, confident, assured adults. I'm not saying life's not going to happen and someone dumps you and you end up, you know, feeling like you're going to get dumped for the rest of your life, but you have confidence, you can reassure yourself when bad things happen. And again, if you've got unresolved trauma as well, and you've had things happen where you've been neglected, abused, or experienced loss, then those parts of your personality are going to be negatively impacted too. So again, if anything happened, even if you were bullied at school, if you were you know, anything, and you feel like you're over it, but you've not dealt with it, but you do sometimes feel like you've got some of the negative effects still showing up in your life, like feeling over, you know, you know, fears and worries and anxieties which can relate to those things, then it is time to address them. It is, and it's a journey. It's not just address them and you know,
Yeah,
do
sure.
look into it more. Or I talk about it a lot on my page as
Yeah.
well, so reach out to me and I'll support, you know, in any way I can. But this is more important than anything I could probably say right now, seriously.
Yeah, this actually leads me to the next question, which is, before you were diagnosed with ADHD and CPTSD, did you struggle because of it? And how did you struggle if you did?
Yeah, so um I did, because I struggled with a lot. I guess that's how I got diagnosed. I went to a doctor to talk about my hormones because I'd turned 30 and I thought, I've definitely got some new hormones this year because I am feeling very different. My emotions are all over the place. You know, I'm not able to concentrate. Like I was struggling with small things. Like I used to be able to read a book in a week. I couldn't even read a paragraph without wanting to go back. I was unable to focus on a book. Which is something that was really hard for me because I love reading. And I just found out of nowhere, I would be reading a book and then my concentration would just go, and I would either start thinking about 20 things whilst reading, or get this urge to put the book down and go and do other things. And so I felt restless constantly. I had loads of I would leave things last minute because, you know, important things, and it would stress me out. And yeah, and so yeah, I struggled with a lot of things, but again, um it's a lot of it can be the amount of time, like, so the amount of time I had never dealt with other things. So it gets to a point. It's like if you eat sugar every single day of your life, you might feel fine, but then there's going to be a point where you might get diabetes, or there's going to be a point where your teeth might start to erode. What you're doing is unhealthy, and it doesn't show up until a certain point. And so for me, this is what I genuinely believe happened, is I was finding unhealthy coping mechanisms for a lot of the trauma, pain that I'd been through. This is when I noticed the change. I was in a really abusive relationship for 6 years. And I was a teenager when I got into the relationship. So it was all of my teenagers. When I got out of the relationship, I had like a year of extreme anxiety and fear because I didn't realize I was a victim of domestic abuse until I was out. So I didn't know. So then hearing that and realizing that, and it was really bad. So I wanted to get over it. I didn't want to be scared of my ex anymore. I didn't want to be, you know, so I wanted to get over it. And so I found ways to distract myself from those fears and get over it. And that was through substance misuse. That was through drinking, partying, distracting myself with people and friends. And I'm not saying people and friends aren't a wonderful distraction, but you know, going out all the time and being around people that aren't necessarily good for you. Not that they're bad people, by the way, but it's just not what you should be doing. And it was a great distraction, but I'd never dealt with it. Anytime I felt any feelings that reminded me of it, I would completely avoid them and move. Or if someone made me feel similar, I would leave them or get out of that relationship. And so clearly I was, all of this stuff was just adding. And then current issues started happening, and they were adding. And it's like, this is going to cause so much inability to just, you know, your soul is in bits. How can you concentrate? How can you act on, how can you're just all over the place. And so it was all of that repressed stuff that I was struggling with. It was unhealthy to ignore. it. It was unhealthy to not get help. And this is something that is so common because not everyone understands what's going on. So there are so many people that are living lives that are less than their best that they could be. There are so many people that are not accessing joy that's available to them because they don't even know that the fog that they're experiencing is relating to things that they could just be free from if they address, you know.
So that's
So I'm
the
going
thing,
off on a
like
tangent
that's why having a formal diagnosis and knowing or understanding that you have a condition that is causing you all this impulsiveness, you know, and for you to develop all these coping strategies that aren't very healthy, you know, could completely change your life, right? And, you know, if we recognize what we're doing that is contributing to the detriment of us, then we can do a U-turn, right? And then put like some strategies in place to help us move forward. And I think that's what happened when you had your formal diagnosis and you had like a whole new world open to you, and you know, a lot of self-examination.
Just by understanding, it took from speaking about it to understanding it to feeling the most liberated I'd felt in years. And it was just being comfortable hearing that there's something I've got which would normally make someone just completely look down on themselves. Well, not normally, but a lot of people do. They look down on themselves, and just trying to figure it out led to realizing that there's loads of things that can contribute to this diagnosis. There's loads of different things that I could work on that it would help me to be free from the difficult sides. A lot that people say it's incurable. How can all of those symptoms that fall under ADHD be incurable? I just don't. How can rejection sensitive be incurable if you are confident and sure and secure in yourself? Of course it's, you know what I mean? Of course it's a bunch. ADHD is a bunch of, you say attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That's not what it is.
It's
that's just
attention
two
overload.
of the symptoms. Huh?
It's attention overload. It's not deficit. It's like you're paying so much attention to so many
exactly
things.
That's just two of the symptoms that fall under this umbrella, that so many things are being, oh, that person's got ADHD and they're also really, really you know, emotionally unstable. So okay, so this is another symptom of it then. You're if you know how to process your emotions, if you've got peace, and it takes work, you know, to get to that point, then you're not going to have emotional dysregulation. You're going to know how to process your emotions. Exactly. It's you know, it's difficult. It happens out of the blue, but why? If you get to the root of that and learn how to attack and manage that, then it's curable. You know, I mean, because when you've got no symptoms showing up, then what have you got?
So a lot of the things that you mentioned, including, you know, some of the hyper focus, the tenacity and the determination, you know, for people with ADHD, we have that. So there are like some negative traits, but if you flip them around, there are positives too, right? And so the thing is, how do we harness this positive personality traits that we have as people with ADHD, and, you know, achieve a life of joy and success for ourselves? So because you are a mentor and you're so passionate about this subject, I wanted to ask you, how would somebody, you know, harness these gifts, you know, in order to live a fulfilling life?
I would say definitely finding ways to get, you know, a release of energy out. And I feel a bit like a hypocrite because I am only just getting back on it at the moment. But when you're exercising or dancing or doing something which helps your energy release, then you're not as hyperactive inside a lot of the time. So finding things that work so that you can then act on other things, finding out, tapping into creativity, finding a job that you enjoy. It's not always as easy as ABC, but if you do work towards actually all these ideas you get, all these projects that come swimming into your mind, finding one, figuring out how you can turn it into maybe a business or something that where you don't have to go through the turmoil of of what it feels like to do a job you don't enjoy. You can't concentrate, you're late all the time because you're not stimulated by your job. So you're, if you can tap into a creativity that you have or you had before, re-engage with that, that's a great way. If you can find a way to help other people on the back of your experiences, that's another way. And sharing your experiences is a great way to do that. And there's loads of creativity attached to most people I know that have been diagnosed with ADHD, whether it be dancing, singing, writing, actual colorful art and stuff like that. But yeah, if you have ideas, you get loads of ideas and you get loads of inspiration on your good days, writing it all down and choosing one to try and turn into something that makes you your own boss, I guess. And it doesn't have to be a big, massive, successful company. You could be selling, you could be hand making birthday cards and selling them on Etsy, and that could turn into a couple grand a month, all your bills paid. Not having to, it doesn't have to be a massive multi-million pound business. Just doing something that you enjoy, that helps you to see your gifts, helping others, that your gifts are being used to help others, whether it's lovely cards that uplift people or whether it's all the any different kind of things that we mentioned before I go off again. Then doing that. And if you think, yeah, but I've got so many projects, I don't know which one to choose, get one and create a schedule, small goals, break it down into small goals, really manageable. So like, give yourself, even if it's one task every couple of days, you're going to get so stimulated by getting that complete that it will give you energy for the next one. And even if you have to break down, say you want to write a book and you have to break that down into doing like giving yourself a time limit, or if you want to start a podcast, or I don't know, I'm just coming up with things that have come onto my mind lately. But just beginning, and you will get stimulated by every time you'll get stimulation and confidence in yourself. Someone said to me recently that you gain so much self-confidence when you make a promise to yourself that you commit to and you stick to. And if you and it's true, giving yourself a little goal, sticking to it, it will give you so much confidence and energy that you will complete more than you've ever been able to. And I'm still on that journey now, practicing it and trying to remember to.
But that's amazing. You have so many golden nuggets, that I'm like, I wish I have a paper and pen, But yeah, I also came across at Hallowell, who said that there is the other vitamin C that we need, which is connectedness. And I think, like, with you being so outspoken about this, you have a lot of people come up to you, to share your experience and your thoughts. That's such a good way for us to manage, our condition as well, because we are outside of ourselves when we talk, and we can connect with others and feel like a sense of solidarity, which helps us so much, doesn't it? Actually take you out of that spiral sometimes as well.
And you can also get accountability with those people and share ideas, especially if some people have learned how to manage more than you or earlier than you, and it's great, rather than just talking about, is this hard for you? Yeah, this is hard for me too. Instead, just finding ways of like, do you know how to combat this? Shall we try? Shall we maybe spend some time together trying to combat this and experiment together? And then you've got like not only have you got like the support and the connection, but you've got accountability and problem solving all in one.
Yeah, that's incredible. And also for people who lived in the UK, recently I've just been able to benefit from a scheme called Access to Work, where you can apply for coaching sessions.
Wow.
Yeah, so that is so incredible, because the government could pay someone with disability to get some free coaching sessions, and that has been so eye-opening for me. There's so many other tools as well that we can get from that. Yeah, so having that resource, to then, maybe partner up and talk to someone like you, who can then help others. It's so life-changing.
Yeah, and for anyone here that does feel that they need, access and support, I've actually got a community online called the Orange Room. So if you go on my page and check the link in the bio, and I've been doing I've been sharing some stuff on Instagram at the moment, but by March I'm going to be doing a lot of workshops around ADHD. I'm going to be doing a lot of teaching around all different things. At the moment I've been doing just stuff that I would share with people that I coach anyway, encouraging people to journal, to practice affirmations, to speak goodness over yourself and reconnect with yourself in that way. But coming up in the next few weeks, I'm going to be doing loads, and there's loads of other people on the platform too. So it's a platform called Kygo. There's loads of coaches, wellness professionals, medical professionals, and it's amazing. And everyone's got their own circle, their own community, and I've got a community circle on there, and mine is, unique to what I do. But there's people that you can just, message, ask for support. We've got topics, and one of them's ADHD, and you can go in there and get loads of information and support as well. So if anybody does feel that they need that, that they do need a community, and it's not, if you want to have a social media break but you get so much from social media, then this is something that's separate to social media, and it's just loads of people all connecting for one reason, and it's to uplift our soul and better our health, mental, physical, emotional. So do come and join. Just click the link in my bio and it says join the Orange Room, and then you'll be pleasantly surprised. So do.
Thank you, Penny. I think I'll come as well.
Yeah,
but,
get some
thank
coaching.
you so much. Thank you for your time today. It's been incredible and really generous with your insights and your experience, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I could also see a lot of people have benefited from it as well, from all the comments that come every second. Thank you for your time, and I hope that we can work together in the future too.
Definitely. I'll see you soon in the Orange Room, probably. And and let me know if there's anything I can do to help process or whatever.
Thank you.
You're
Have
welcome.
A good day.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for coming on.
Thank you.